This is We the Sales Engineers Podcast, show 150.
Welcome to We the SEs Podcast, the show for sales engineers by sales engineers with your host, Ramsey Majaba.
What's up, SE Nation? Welcome back to another video. This is the first video I've done during the day. So if you hear kids running, that's kids running. If you hear stampeding, that's also kids running. And now that the baby's a little bit older, I actually have time to record a little bit during the day. So thank you guys for being here. I really appreciate it. The good news is I have a guest for next week, so you don't have to listen to me talk much more. But I did have a question for you. I've been doing this. This is the third week straight where it's just me and you, whatever you're doing, going for a walk, working out in the basement, whatever it is that you're doing. This is the third week. And I want to know what you guys think. Is this content interesting for you? Did you enjoy it? Do you want me to do more of it? Do you want me to do less of it? Do you want me not to do it at all? Any feedback would be appreciated, because like every other SE or most other SEs or some other SEs are out there, I'm always trying to improve, always trying to get better. This was one way for me to improve my public speaking, which is something we're talking about a little bit today. But it's also a way for me to provide content or to provide my knowledge to whoever wants to listen. So thank you guys for being here. Hit me up on LinkedIn or Twitter or comment on this page, wherever you're listening to this. Let me know what you guys think. And if you haven't left a rating or review, please make sure to do so. I would truly appreciate it. And it will let people know that this is a valuable spot for someone to actually get some information. So for this episode, what I'm actually doing is I'm reusing a webinar that I did a few months ago, and it's all about the basics of sales engineering. So if you are new to sales engineering, this would be great. If you're trying to get more information about sales engineering, or you're curious about what is out there in the world, this is perfect for you. So let's just jump into it. And if you are an experienced SE, I would love to hear your thoughts about what I actually provided, and if you have any other information that I can incorporate to the next webinar I do. So let's jump in. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Basics of Sales Engineering webinar. So just so everybody's aware, whoever's listening to this or watching this, I recorded this live with a bunch of folks, and I got a lot of good feedback. The issue is I had paused the recording and I never actually restarted it. So I'm re-recording this for everyone who wanted to listen to it after the fact, who registered for the webinar, wasn't able to show up. I might share it with the larger group. But the bottom line is there isn't going to be too much interaction here. It's going to be me basically talking, which, good news, it might be a little bit shorter, as I don't remember every question that was asked on Thursday last week. And I just want to make sure that I get it out to everybody who wants to watch this or learn more about the basics of sales engineering. Now, I mentioned previously, and in case you didn't know, I do have a course called The Road to Sales Engineering. And this would be a portion of the first module that I would be covering in that course. And I'm providing it for everybody to know what's in the course. So if you are interested in learning more about the course later on, you can keep going and you can register for it. Or if not, at least it'll be useful information that you can use in your career. What is a sales engineer? Well, it's fairly complicated to provide a definition for sales engineering. Some of the definitions here are kind of a joke, like the first one, although maybe not. We are God's gift to mankind. Some would disagree. However, a lot of the definitions for sales engineers talk about what we do, not who we are, like some tasks that we provide. So I like to think of sales engineers as a technical partner for account managers, a partner, not an employee, doesn't report to it. So doesn't report to the account manager, but a partner, someone who can advise both account managers and customers about next steps or best processes, collect technical information, and build solutions based on that. So if you think about it, if the account manager is Steve Jobs, then the SE is Steve Wozniak. we work together to provide a solution to the customers. But how it would, like, if I were to explain a little bit in more details, I would say a sales engineer is a problem solver. Basically, we gather information and try to solve a problem because that's kind of how we're wired. We also provide advice to the account manager and the customer, and we consult with them. And as people like to think, or SEs like to think, in the relationship between the account managers and the SEs is the smart one. Not always true, but it's a common joke that we kind of throw around. The first time I met, so as soon as I moved to my new job as a sales engineer back in 2014, I had to go to a training that was simultaneously provided for all SEs. It wasn't like a training for new SEs. It was just a training that was already pre-scheduled. And my manager said it was both SEs and account managers, and he wanted to split us up. He says, SEs stay here. Those who have a lobotomy go there. So there's a running joke between SEs and account managers that sometimes is borderline offensive, but we're all adults and we can take it. So what do we do? Well, that depends. But there are some things that we do that are in common between most SEs that I know. Generally, the SEs do demos, a lot of demos. Doesn't matter what kind of SE you are, inside SE, outside SE, a specialist, a staff SE, which we're going to talk about in later slides. We all do demos. Even myself, most of my customers are existing customers, so I don't have to do that much demos, but I still do demos on occasion. With my previous job, I didn't have existing customers. I had to win new customers, so my job was mostly demos. And we're there to answer technical questions from both the customer's perspective and from the account manager's perspective, because the customer needs information to make a decision. The account manager needs information to be able to actually help the customer make a decision or defend a proposal, whatever it is. A lot of SEs do proof of concepts or pilots or whatever you want to call it. Basically, when the customer takes over and they start playing with the tool, the software, the hardware, whatever it is, and they play with it within their environment. We support the sales manager. That's a very big part of our role. And the last bullet point here is we input info into the CRM. That's not necessarily true. It's something that I would like to be common to all SEs, but not all SEs do it or have to do it. I would highly recommend that we do it, but it's not up to me. It's up to whatever company you work for. I find it highly valuable to input information into customer relations managers for continuity. If you go on vacation, somebody else can take over your opportunity and still provide the information that the customer needs. But otherwise, they'd have to call you on vacation and ask you for information. And I mentioned earlier, like, what does an SE do? Well, it depends. On what? Well, it depends on a bunch of things, including industry. So if you're in like a civil engineer or a mechanical engineer, and you sell like wind turbines or engines for planes or whatever it is, a lot of times the SE is also the salesperson. So it's a hybrid position. I did an interview on the podcast with a gentleman by the name of Andrew Tesla, and he sells turbines to power plants, and he does both. He does the sales part and he does the technical part. When you're going into networking or any other sort of SaaS company, you can split those roles. There's a SE and there's a salesperson, and that's the way it works. But even if within that, the SE's role would change from customer to customer. So I already gave myself as an example. I worked for 2 different companies in the same industry. One already is entrenched with customers. The other one was trying to break in. When I was trying to break in, most of my job was pre-sales, demos, discovery calls, customer visits, just to like build relationships. With the new company, because we're already entrenched and the customer really trusts us and doesn't really need a demo to make sure that it works the way you were saying it works. He knows that it will work. They'll just buy from us. So my role is to make sure that they're happy. So when they buy from us, they don't have an objection like, you didn't support me at this time, your support team didn't do a great job here. So that role changes. And also, if your product is complex or your product is simple, if it's a simple product, actually, let's go back to customers. You have small, medium customers, you have enterprise customers, you have government. The role will change from one vertical to another. And that also change with the complexity of the product. So if the product is complex, then you're going to be doing more discovery calls with the customers. You're going to be doing more hands-on stuff. If your product is simple, your account managers might be doing all the discovery, and then you're just doing the demo and maybe some follow-up. And there are different types of SEs, which I will talk about in a second. The second is now. So the different types of SEs. There might be more, but this is what I see so far in the industry that I'm working in, or the industries that I've talked about. Inside sales engineer is an engineer who actually does not leave the office. He sits behind a desk and he does demo after demo after demo after demo. He supports multiple account managers. Could be up to 10, 20, whatever it is. He could be not, or she doesn't have to be necessarily tied to an account manager. It could be a pool of SEs helping a pool of account managers. And that's how they work. That I've seen this for non-complex SaaS, where there isn't much customization that takes place. It's more, this is what you see. What you see is what you get. So the demos are sort of like that. They're not generally involved in discovery or implementation after the customer purchased. They're always sitting behind their desks, so they don't travel. They're not building relationships because they're working with many customers all at the same time. Like in one day, they might do 6 or 7 demos to 6 or 7 different customers. So in a week, let's say it's 5 demos, just to make it easier for my math. That's 25 customers that they've interacted with. But other companies, other sales engineers, for example, a regular sales engineer right here, that's a sales engineer, or a senior version of that. So if you join a brand new company as a brand new SE, you've never been an SE before, but you have some technical experience, you might be joining as a sales engineer or a senior sales engineer. It depends on how long and what's your experience. So as a sales engineer, you're actually doing a lot of discovery. Depends on the company. You might be actually helping with the implementation after the fact. If it's a complex product, then there's a professional services team that will do that. You might be traveling depending on the geographical area that you're covering, and you will definitely be building relationships with your customers. If you're a sales engineer, you might be doing some post-sales work. I put a check mark here, but it's a might be. In my previous role, in my previous company, there was a post-sales engineer who did all the post-sales responsibilities. I was a pre-sales engineer, and I didn't have to do, it was frowned upon that I did any post-sales work. I would encourage some post-sales work, even if it's not part of your job, because that's one way for you to get in there with a customer and develop relationships and find out what they actually need and don't need. Same thing for senior sales engineer. In terms of the role, the customer-facing role, it doesn't change much from a senior sales engineer to a sales engineer. However, the impact from within the company you're working for changes. So as a sales engineer, you might have some mentoring responsibilities internally for your teammates. You might have to do some training. I was tasked with managing or creating a system to consolidate the labs, not physically, just virtually, have one place to get all that information. So as a senior sales engineer, you'll be given responsibilities outside of that. As a principal SE, your responsibilities will also grow. However, your post-sales responsibility, in my opinion, should shrink, because now your radius impact is even larger in terms of working with customers. You're so close to being a manager. You're almost you're a team lead. You're supposed to help other struggling SEs, bring them up to par. You're traveling to cover for SEs who are on vacation or sick or just not doing a great job, and you need to help them with their demos. So that's the sort of work that increases. So between sales engineer to principal sales engineer, from a customer perspective, it doesn't change, but the internal responsibilities might increase and the impact would increase. And then you have the specialist SE. So in my world, we have generalist SEs and specialist SEs. The generalist SEs may own more than one product or technology that they should be able to sell. So if you're in networking, you could be selling Ethernet, you could be selling LTE, you could be selling SD-WAN, you could be selling optical transport. If you're in SaaS, you can think of other examples like that, where you have basically multiple technologies together that you end up selling. A specialist focus on one of those aspects, one of those areas, where that's it. So he dives deep into that area, but so he dives deep, we dive broad. The generalists have broad knowledge of everything. A specialist has focus on one or two topics. And SE's own accounts with their account managers, possibly if the ratio is small. For example, one SE to one account manager, or one SE to 2 or 3 account managers, they own the relationship. But when it comes to a specialist SE, he doesn't own any relationship. Like, he might have a relationship, but it's not part of their job. It makes them better at their job if they can build that relationship. But they cover such a wide geographical area or wide base of customers that they don't have the opportunity to build the same relationship that we can build with our customers. And they generally don't do any post-sales work or any implementation, because their job is to sell. Or, as some people point out, our job is to help our customers using our product, not somebody else's product, obviously. So I'm going to be posting this on YouTube. So if you have any questions, just make sure you comment in the questions check in the comments section on YouTube and ask those questions, or email me, either way. There's also a group of engineers called the POC or demo engineers. Those are for complicated solutions. In networking, like Cisco, Ciena, Nokia, they all have a POC team. So if you're in that world, like whether it's security, like if you're built in networking, whether it's firewalls, load balancers, there might be a team that's dedicated for POCs and demos. If you're looking to get a job as an SE and you're struggling to do that, you might be able to find a job as a demo engineer first, and then move on to sales engineering. That's one option to take in that world. That's why I wanted to bring this up here. More titles for SEs. There's a wide gambit of titles. These might not cover all. They're on the slide, so you guys can read them. The point is, if you're trying to find a job, don't narrow your search to just one terminology. You have a lot of different terminologies that can reflect your role. For example, Google uses customer engineer. My previous job uses systems engineer. In Europe, they use pre-sales. They use consultants, because some people don't want to use the word engineer if the person didn't graduate with an engineering degree or a professional engineer. So it changes. When you're looking at a job description, just look at the job description to see if it suits a sales engineer. If it is a customer facing, doing demos, POCs, presentations, make sure it just looks like a sales engineering role if you want to apply to a sales engineering role. Because systems engineer could mean that you're actually designing a system, like coding, architecture. So it could mean totally different things. And some of these roles, like solution consultant, could be a post-sales role. So make sure it's a pre-sales role. If you get screened in and you have this conversation with your hiring manager, talk about commission. Check if it's a post-sales or pre-sales, or what are the pre-sales responsibilities versus the post-sales responsibilities. Some of the tasks that we do on a weekly basis, this does not cover everything by any means, but there are some of them. We do travel a lot, and some SEs, depending on the geographical area. My co-host for the podcast, Benny, he's actually in New Mexico, Albuquerque, New Mexico. Yeah, as we speak right now, and he travels quite a bit. Other SEs travel a lot. I don't travel at all, so depending on your role, we definitely do presentations. We do demos. We also prepare for them. That's a big thing that people forget. We don't do presentations without preparing for them and preparing the presentation. It's most of the time it's a customized presentation that I provide for my customers. I don't just take a corporate slide deck and just go through it, because that would be boring and it didn't have any insight. We do discovery calls. We do we make sure that the customer is happy by following up on support tickets and making sure that they have solved. We meet with the customers. We go have lunch, breakfast, or dinner. And if I'm talking too fast, it's because there's a lot of material that I'd like to cover, because I want you guys to have all the information that you need. We do help members that are more junior. That's a typo. It should be junior than you are. We also help SEs that are senior if they ask for help, and we learn and ramp up on new products. So we do all that, but when do we do that? The whole process, there's something called the sales process, and that's something I learned actually like a few months after I got my first SE role. I didn't know what everybody was talking about when they were talking about the sales process. Although otherwise known as a sales cycle. And if you talk to 5 different SEs, or if you go even within my company, there's 2 different teams, and their sales process or sales cycle is different. But this is a basic one. There's qualification, discovery, selling, closing, and then implementation. So what I've highlighted in yellow is parts that SEs can be involved with. In green, SEs are definitely involved with, at least I hope. And then in red, SEs have pretty much nothing to do with. So let's go through each of them. Qualification. Well, that's when the salesperson actually gets a lead, calls up the customer, makes sure he has budget, he has the influence to actually make the decision, what's the timeline of where they want to buy or what they want to buy, and a basic understanding if their problem can be solved with our product. The SE could be involved in case there's a new salesperson, or the salesperson isn't technical enough to actually ask some of the technical questions in the qualification. So they might be involved. When my new salesperson joined me in my previous job, I was involved in pretty much all the qualifications for like a year and a half, and then he started taking over a little bit more. And SE's job is to make sure that their salesperson is successful, so we do whatever it takes to actually help them out. Then you have the discovery, which is where you gather information from the customer. You're trying to uncover the business problem, make sure there is a business problem. Some of these could be, you could argue that it's part of the responsibilities of the salesperson, but I think it's either or. You can both work together. It's a team thing. So by uncovering the business, figuring out who's going to be blocking you or who's going to be actually helping you out, and then gather technical requirements to make sure that when you demo something that they want to see that will be useful for them, and then help build the vision, even through discovery. Some people wait for the selling part, but I like to do it in a discovery, especially if there's a product that I know would help the customer, but the customer has no idea that he actually has, or she has, a problem. So I try to build a vision that way, by asking them hey, if we do it like this, how could this help you? And then they start thinking about it and building the vision in their own mind. And then comes the selling part. This is where we do presentations, demos. A lot of it is on the SE here. As you can see, the salesperson might present a portion, like a corporate corporate structure or whatever, which most customers don't like to see. But the SEs would do the demo, would do presentation of the solution. If we have a need to do a proof of concept, we would do that. But the whole point is to show that what we're showing you actually solves the business problem that you talked about in the discovery phase. And then we do the technical close. I do have here that you show value plus ROI. A common mistake is when we try to enforce an opinion about an ROI to our customers. One of my former colleagues actually tried to tell the customer in Canada that if you buy this tool, you might be able to replace one or two employees, and each employee gets paid $150,000 and plus benefits, so that's around $300. So you'd be saving around $600,000, which is completely and utterly false. That was an assumption on the salesperson's part, because people get paid around 50 to 60K in that whatever they were doing. So if the customer was happy about letting go two of their employees, or at least repurposing two of their employees, they'd be saving a total of $100,000, not $600,000. That might be an advanced topic that we can talk about at a later date. And then you do the technical close, which at that point the salesperson can take over and do the actual close. And what that means is get the purchase order in your hand. The deal is not closed until you have a purchase order in your hand. And in order to get that, they'd have to negotiate on the price, the timeline, when they want to actually receive the equipment or the software, what would be included in the sale in terms of help. So all that. And then after, when they get the equipment, they put in the PO, purchase order, PO, they get the equipment, and it is our job to make sure that it's working properly. We sold it. It is our responsibility for it to work the way we promised that it would work. There is a separate team that would do the implementation, that will physically be there. But if something goes wrong, it's going to come back to the sales team. And if the SE is the one who promised that it will work the way the customer wants it to work, then it is the SE's responsibility to find solutions to the problem. And we can use the implementation to find a way to upsell for different products and keep the conversation going with the customer. At that point, different companies have different ways of moving forward. Some companies have customer success teams that take over the account, and then the sales team goes and tries to find new accounts. Or some companies, the sales team would actually stay on that account, support them, and try to find new opportunities. It's interesting to see that sales engineers, we actually have to talk about the org structure because it changes from company to company. The most common, and the one that I like the most, is where you're reporting, an SE is reporting to SE managers and SE directors before you get reported into the sales portion, like VP of sales or chief revenue officer. So as you can see here, we have SEs reporting to managers. There might be team leads involved. So an SE could be reporting to a team lead, or the team lead could just be there to support the SE and not have a direct report. And then you have the SE manager who would report to the director or VP of field engineering. It could be global, it could be local, whatever it is, depending on the size of the company. And that's my favorite org structure for sales engineers. Mainly because in the second one, when you're reporting to a sales director, the salesperson, they're wired differently than account manager, than SEs. And that's based on a conversation I just had with an SE leader. His name is Chris White. Check out the podcast when it comes up. But when you're working with a sales director, when you're working with salespeople, SEs tend to be treated like a free resource. Oh, the customer wants this done, SE, go do it. So it's more of a gopher, and it takes a lot of effort from an SE's perspective to be able to influence and guide the account manager at that point. But in this case, you have like account manager, SEs and account managers all reporting to a sales director. You could have an SE team leader where SEs report to the leader and then to the sales director. same thing. In the end, you report to a sales director, which is like very close. Like I prefer several layers of separation between SEs and sales. Although, like right now today, I report to my sales director directly, and he's also my sales guy. It's he's a former SE, so he's not wired that much differently, but it has its challenges, it has its benefits. And then the third one is probably the worst one. That's pretty much for new companies where you're trying to grow a team, and the account manager hires SEs, and then he's their boss. And I find that to be a complete disaster. And I personally try to avoid it as much as possible. If you're a new SE, I don't think this is a good organizational structure for you, mainly because at that point you will be a gopher. Your job is to go and solve problems, like go basically do whatever the account manager says. Whereas with here, you have some layers of separation. Basically, where the account manager would be, let me see if I can get a. So where the account manager would be here, then from the VP of sales, you'd have a bunch of sales directors, and under the sales directors, you'd have salespeople. So there is two columns of at least a column of separation between you and the account manager. This is not very common. This is for new, organizational structure 3, where the SE reports to the account manager directly. It's not very common. It's more for like startups, brand new companies, that sort of thing, or like you're starting a new product, and you have one account manager in SE, and there you go. But our work is not limited to working with customers and account managers. They are a big portion of who we work with, but we also work with other SEs. We work with product managers if there's a new feature that we need, or we're trying to understand a new feature that's coming down the pipe. We work with product marketing. I do a lot of work with support engineers just to make sure that everything is being solved on time. Luckily, I have great support engineers who don't need that much managing, which makes my life easier. And if there are POC engineers in your company, then you might have to work with them as well. Now, how do you get paid? You're doing a lot of work, you're working with a lot of different people, your tasks are all over the place, and you have to get compensated for that. Most companies pay a base and a commission, and it could be a 70-30 split. So when I say 70-30 split here, that means 70% of your salary is base, so that's the guaranteed portion of your money, of your income coming in, and 30% is commission. It could be, so same thing with 80-20, where 80 is base and 20 is commission, 90-10. Not very common, but I've seen that in a few different places. I find that in networking environment, 80-20, so Cisco, Sienna, Nokia, that's the split. For SaaS, I see 70-30 more. AI, machine learning, that's what I see here. You could also have a base and a bonus. So based on how the company is doing, more than anything else, company did well, you get paid a bonus. It's like a regular employee. And then you also have like the option for just salary. Well, it's not an option. It depends on the company that you're applying to. Now, if we're talking about the commission, the reason I like it is because if you sell more, you get paid more. And this is quota based. So you have, you need to sell $1 million worth of equipment. You sell more than $1 million, you get paid more than $1 million, more than whatever your commission is. Generally speaking, if you're incentivized to hit your quota and or exceed it. So a basic example is if you get paid 1% of commission for every 1% of quota, once you achieve your quota, you sold everything. So you already got paid 100% of your commission. At that point, if you start selling 1% of quota, you get paid 2% of commission. If the incentive or the accelerator is ×2, it could be ×3, 4, whatever the company is wants to do. And you also have companies that cap it at a certain number. It could be capping it at like when you achieve quota, that's it. You're not going to make any more money. Or it could be capped like if you achieve 130%, at that point we won't pay you anymore. So these are questions you should ask when you're applying for a job. And then you have management by objective, which is you have a number of tasks that need to be done. So it could be number of demos, number of proof of concept, number of internal training, a combination thereof, and you get paid based on the work you did there. So I like the management by objective because you're in control of your destiny. Somewhat you're trying to schedule demos. You can schedule demos. You can schedule proof of concepts. The problem is if, for example, in my area, most of my customers do routing and networking. So layer 2, layer 3. Let's just use that term. And then other people do application we also sell application testing. If they put in the number of demos for my application testing as 10, but none of my customers actually do that, then like I'm going to schedule 10 demos to people who don't really care, just so I can make my commission, which isn't a great way to do this. Now, what do you need to do to prepare for the role? I'd like to break it down into 3 columns. You have communication, technical, and human. Communication is anything verbal, anything like whether you're writing it, you're saying it, your body language, that's communication. And I like to highlight listening because people tend to not listen for some reason. And, you know, I've been talking for 29 minutes almost, and I haven't listened to a single thing, but that's kind of hard when there's nobody else on the other end. But you can practice listening. You can practice listening with your family right now. You don't need to wait to become a sales engineer to practice listening. You can start listening right now. You can start trying to like make jokes right now. And I'm not talking like dirty jokes. It's just like simple jokes with customers that just breaks the tension. We have to learn how to write emails better, present better, all that. From a technical perspective, we need to be able to whiteboard. And I mentioned this in 2 places because you need to be able to whiteboard a technical problem. It doesn't have to be a work of art. We're not talking about the Mona Lisa here. There's a school of thought that if your drawing is so good, customers will be intimidated to come up and actually modify it for you. So I don't have that problem. My drawings suck anyways, but at least I get up there and whiteboard. I have to be able to answer technical questions, which is twofold. First of all, I have to know the answer. And second of all, I have to be able to actually communicate that to the customer. I need to be able to do demos and solve problems in the end. And from the human perspective, we need to be able to joke around with people, break the tension, read them, build a relationship with them. And some of this is like persuade, negotiate, selling. I said read people twice because it's so important, I guess. And influence twice. I copied and pasted them. But, persuade them. These are all part of like selling. So these are some sales skills. How can we improve our communication skills? Well, there are multiple ways. You can do Toastmasters, which is, I guess, it's very famous. A lot of people do it. A lot of people enjoy doing it. Then you can do like some things that are out of the box. You can start your own YouTube channel and you can watch yourself present or watch yourself talk and then figure out from there, am I talking too fast? Am I talking too slow? Am I saying a lot? You be your own critic, not critique. You be your own critic and you're able to actually use that information to improve the next time you do a video, next time you talk to a customer. The same thing with blog and written skills. If you if you don't want to post it on YouTube, you can have a camera and just talk to the camera and see how it goes. Again, watch yourself after. The reason I say have a YouTube channel or post on YouTube because it might be something that is useful to other people as well. So you'll be helping multiple people at the same time. It will not be a waste of time. And then there are improv courses that you can take to actually learn to think on the spot and have a conversation with customers instead of shutting down if it ever happens. From a technical perspective, you have different ways to actually learn. So the bookstore, libraries, these are all obvious places where you can get information. But if you like videos, Pluralsight is a good company that actually provides information about. Like you can actually learn there's a lot of videos about AWS. If you're interested in that, there's software development I know a lot of software developers who use that to improve their learning. I also like O'Reilly Learning, and I'm actually using that to study for my GCP, my Google Cloud Platform certification. It's very useful, and it has videos and it has books, so I like that. You can do certifications, which is a combination. Like I'm using O'Reilly to do certification. You can build your own home labs. You can read books, and you can watch YouTube. There's a lot of free information on YouTube that you can use to improve your technical skills. And then from a human perspective, improv groups, I already mentioned that. Dale Carnegie, he has a book called Stand Up and Deliver, which is like talking about presenting. But he also has the book that I like is How to Win Friends and Influence People, which is all about connecting with people, learning to make friends, basically. Become self-aware. Like try to reflect on what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong. I hate to break it to anybody listening to this, but we are not perfect. We tend to learn a lot by watching our own behaviors. So if you think back about things that something you said that you should have said differently, like just learn from your mistakes, basically. You can practice all this during dinners and lunches with customers or with families and friends. Call up a family friend and just listen to them. Smile, even if you're smiling on the phone. I mean, I'm sure someone said that at some point to you in your career. Smiling on the phone makes a difference in the way you talk to your counterpart. Now, I'm not a naturally smiley person. It's hard for me to smile. Especially when I'm talking to a camera and a microphone. When there's other people on the line, I tend to smile easier. But if I can practice smiling in front of a microphone right now, like I have a half smile on one side, it will translate into having a better conversation with customers. If Who do you think a customer would enjoy talking to? A person who frowns all the time, or who smiles appropriately? I'm not saying being the joker and just smiling all the time, but smile appropriately. There is also a very good book that is called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss about negotiation. And he also touches on the human aspect of negotiation, why things work. I would highly recommend that book. That's pretty much it. Usually I stay for a Q&A, but since this is a recording, I will not be doing that. I will just bid you a farewell, and I will see you guys next time. All right. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for being here. Again, the good news is next week we're going to have actually my good friend, Chris White. He's back, and I wanted him to be the first guest back since my wife gave birth for sentimental reasons. And so I will see you there.